Welcome to Picking Bones. My name is Eric Jones. 18 years ago, the world was forever changed by the devastating September 11th attacks. Today, we're going to explore what really happened on those attacks, and we're going to start by looking at some new information that has come out just this year. The New York area fire commissioners made history by calling for a new 9/11 investigation. They started off by saying the Pledge of Allegiance, then 10 minutes later, they were reading the text of a resolution claiming the existence of overwhelming evidence that pre-planted explosives caused the destruction of the World Trade Center buildings. That's right. New York firefighters have called for a new investigation. This is historic. The Franklin Square and Munson Fire District has really done something bold with this with this call for a new investigation. But we also see just this last week, this new study came out that says fire did not cause the third tower's collapse on 9/11, and this was done by the University of Alaska at Fairbanks, and they did a 4-year study with hundreds of thousands of dollars of investment to perform this study to prove that fire could not have caused the collapse of the third tower that fell on September 11th. Because if you're not aware, 3 towers came down after 2 planes hit them. The third tower, Building 7, was said to have collapsed just due to structural fires. We also have a couple of stories that have come out relating to Saudi Arabia. The judge has ruled that the FBI has to release new details of the Sarasota investigation, and that's because of their ties for September 11th attacks to Saudi Arabia. And we have this report from just a few days ago, an opinion piece from the New York Post, talking about how Robert Mueller helped cover up the Saudi Arabian involvement in the 9/11 attacks. But let's get back to it. Let's go back to the event itself. And to do that, we're going to start a day before the attacks, actually, on September 10th, when $2.3 trillion went missing. Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld revealed that the Pentagon had lost it. $2.3 trillion from their budget. And just weeks before the 15th anniversary of the terrorist attack, there were claims that the same department could not account for a further $6 trillion. What happened to all this money, and why did it happen right before September 11th? Now, the people that were charged to investigate September 11th, the 9/11 commissioners, they faced a lot of trouble the entire way. Information was withheld. They were lied to. They were not given the proper resources they needed. So you've got stories like this: 9/11 panel suspected deception by the Pentagon. And you have this interesting video clip from one of the commissioners themselves.
Lee and I write in our book that we think the commission in many ways was set up to fail because we had not enough money. We didn't have enough time. We had been appointed by the most partisan people in Washington, the leaders of the House and Senate.
So why was the committee that was set up to investigate one of the most important events in all of history, why were they set up to fail? Why weren't they given the proper resources to investigate this? I mean, I would say it's pretty obvious they didn't want them to uncover what actually happened. We have, looking back through American history, we have precedent for false flag attacks. We have things like Operation Northwoods, which was a proposed operation where the American government would stage attacks of terror on American soil, hurting civilian and military targets, and then blaming it on the Cuban government as an excuse to for military operations in Cuba. But this proposal was rejected by JFK, so Operation Northwoods did not happen, but it was a proposed operation. And this is just one example of how the military government has done things like this, or at least considered things like this before. But from the beginning of 9/11, we were lied to about so many things, even things that seem
And you don't have to be a
Like, why would they
conspiracy
lie?
theorist to wonder exactly what President George W. Bush knew about the attack and when he knew it. According to the official White House version, it was at this moment in a Florida classroom that Bush learned the second plane had hit the World Trade Center and that the U.S. was under attack. But here's what George Bush himself said almost 3 months later when asked about September 11th.
Was sitting outside the classroom waiting to go in, and I saw an airplane hit the tower of a TV. You know, the TV was obviously on, and I used to fly myself, and I said, well, there's one terrible pilot. And I said it must have been a horrible accident. But I was whisked off there. I didn't have much time to think about it.
Now, wait a minute. George Bush was told about the second plane while he was inside the classroom. So you just heard him describe seeing the first plane crash on television that day. But that's impossible. No one saw the first plane crash on TV on September the 11th because the videotape of it didn't surface until the next day. So how could George Bush have seen what he said he saw?
No one saw the first plane hitting the first tower on television until maybe the next day, days after, though, the attack, because there was only one recording, I believe, of that first plane hitting the tower. It wasn't captured. People were watching after the first plane hit, so they caught the second one. But so why does he even lie about that? It's an absurd claim, but maybe he just couldn't keep his facts straight. I don't know, but he was just full of lies. Immediately following the attacks, there is a video clip of him saying this, but I couldn't find it. George Bush stated that nobody in our government, at least, and I don't think the prior government, could envision flying airplanes into buildings. Condoleezza Rice also claimed that no one could have predicted that they would try to use an airplane as a missile. And we had an Air Force general say something that the attack was something that we had never seen before, something that we had never even thought of. Why are all these officials saying that they never even imagined something like this? That's retarded and blatantly untrue. Check out this clip.
The building was designed to have...
This is from a guy who was involved with the management of the construction of the Twin Towers.
A fully loaded 707 crash into it. That was the largest plane at the time. I believe that the building probably could sustain multiple impacts of jetliners because this structure is like the mosquito netting on your screen door, this intense grid, and the jet plane is just a pencil puncturing that screen netting. It really does nothing to the screen netting.
So these buildings were specifically built to withstand the impact of a plane. So that, clearly somebody thought about this, but not just the people who built that building. The government has thought extensively about this. And so this is a timeline of the history of government drills practicing for things just like this. You've got in 82, the Port Authority practicing for a plane crashing into the World Trade Center. You've got NORAD simulations for crashing into a famous U.S. building that they kept classified. You have, they've literally had guys with rocket launchers and automatic rifles on top of the White House in the past to prepare for planes coming. We've had numerous training exercises throughout the years involving terrorist hijackings of planes. You've got Secret Service running computer simulations of planes crashing into the White House. You've got people, Richard Clarke chairing a tabletop exercise at the White House involving a scenario where anti-American militants fly a plane with explosives into D.C. You've got NORAD fighters performing mock shoot-downs of jets carrying chemical weapons towards America. You've got USA Today reporting that in the 2 years before September 11th, the North American Aerospace Defense Command conducted numerous exercises where one of the targets considered was the World Trade Center being hit by a hijacked airliner. They also did the same thing for planning for if the United Nations building got hit. We've got more planning for people using planes as weapons. You've got people planning for the Statue of Liberty getting hit in this way, and the White House. You've got NORAD planning for the United Nations getting hit. You've got people planning for the Pentagon getting hit as well by a plane. So all of these things have been extensive. I mean, there's a lot more. I'm going to stop going through them, but there's just so many of these events where they were planning specifically for this, and you got these officials saying no one could have imagined this. Bullshit. Everyone could have imagined it, and you did, and you practiced for it. Why are you lying so much? Here's something interesting. The United States government was carrying out numerous training exercises on September 11th, war games. So you have Global Guardian, Vigilant Guardian, Vigilant Warrior. So you had operations going on where people were already acting as if we were under attack in these war games. And so that caused confusion when the actual attacks of 9/11 began, because you had all this stuff in the airwaves already about these various exercises. Now, let's take a look at the Pentagon. The Pentagon, I remember when I was in grade school and I heard about the attacks, we were first told about it. I really just couldn't believe that the Pentagon got hit by a plane. It was just unbelievable to me. That the what has to be one of the most well-defended buildings on the planet would be unable to deal with a plane flying towards it. They would have clearly had time to deal with that. I just couldn't make sense of it. And that was me using my mind as a kid. Really smart of me to figure out this obvious lie. I'm just kidding. It's obvious. Everyone should see this. So the official story says that one of the planes, the wings actually touched down on the ground before hitting the building. I mean, but we can see this big open field in front of the building, and it doesn't look like that happened. And in fact, when we look at the building, there don't seem to be any wing marks at all. There's this one collapsed section, but the wingspan would be quite long, and the engines are, I believe, the heaviest thing on the plane. So why wouldn't the engine have done some damage at least? Why isn't this wall caved in? All we have is the black marking and the collapse here specifically. Now, if the government wanted us to just believe the official story, all they would have to do is show us a single video of the Pentagon getting hit. But they've never done that. This is what we've gotten. It's still frames from a security camera. So there it is. There's the only the only camera evidence that they have ever provided that a plane hit the Pentagon. You can see this white thing over here. Is that a plane? Is that a missile? I don't know. Because in the next frame, you've got the explosion. There's literally a single frame. That's all they ever gave us. Just give us the video. And there's plenty of video. Immediately after the attacks, the FBI went around and confiscated video footage from all of the nearby businesses that would have recorded the plane hitting the Pentagon. But none of that footage has ever been released. Judicial Watch has tried quite a bit to get the footage, and this is kind of a timeline of their efforts to do that. And they eventually had managed to get 2 videos, one from a Citgo and one from a DoubleTree, but neither of these videos show the plane. Neither of them. So, pretty worthless stuff. Now, let's take a look at a couple of articles that would try to debunk what I've just said about the Pentagon attack. And this is from Popular Mechanics. It's a really short article. It's very pathetic. Like, this is all you can do to debunk this? That's it? Aren't you supposed to be, like, scientists? But, so, they address a few different questions, and one of them is here. And somebody's got, Meet Sozin is their name. She's got this quote that says, "A crashing jet doesn't punch a cartoon-like outline of itself into a reinforced concrete building," says ASCE member Meet Susan, a professor of structural engineering at Purdue University. In this case, one ring hit the ground, the other was sheared off by the force of the impact with the Pentagon's load-bearing columns. So she says one of the wings touched the ground. It's interesting. Let's take a look at what Snopes has to say about this question. Can you explain what happened to the wings of the aircraft and why they caused no damage? Well, this is what Snopes says. As the Boeing hit the Pentagon, the outer portions of the wings likely snapped during the initial impact, then were pushed inwards towards the fuselage and carried into the building's interior. The inner portions of the wings probably penetrated the Pentagon's walls. Any sizable portions of the wings were destroyed in the explosion and fire. Nonetheless, the damage to the building caused by the plane's wings is plainly visible in the photographs, such as the one below. Note the blackened sections on each side. So wait, did the wings snap and get pushed inside the building, or did the wing touch the ground, hit the ground? Oh, you guys can't seem to keep your stories straight, with your lies and all that. It makes it hard, I know. Let's take a look at this other section. Fact. The way this is laid out pisses me off so much. Claim and fact. Yeah, okay. So Alan E. Kilsheimer says, "I saw the marks of the plane wing hitting on the face of the building. I picked up parts of the plane with the airline markings on them. I held the tail section and the black box. I held parts of the uniform from crew members in my hands, including body parts." Okay? That's how they end this article. Just trying to guilt trip you. How dare you even contemplate the idea that this wasn't exactly what we said it was. This guy had to hold body parts. You should be ashamed of yourself for even wondering about these things. No. Y'all are gonna burn in hell for what you've done. This is so evil. And all of you who helped cover it up, you're gonna have to answer to God one day for what you've done. Here, let's watch this clip from 9/11 Commissioner Tim Romer.
You were afraid. You were worried, especially when I was standing in front of the Pentagon that night, seeing one of our fortresses pried open by a missile airplane, thinking about.
He says the Pentagon was pried open by a missile airplane. A missile airplane. Huh. What, clearly his tongue slips there, but is that because he accidentally said the truth, or what was going on with that? And that's not the only situation like this. Donald Rumsfeld said something similar when he said that Flight 93 was shot down. He's talking about a few other events, and he said, "Or the people who attacked the United States in New York shot down the plane over Pennsylvania and attacked the Pentagon. Shot down the plane over Pennsylvania. It's an interesting way to describe that event. But we do know that Cheney ordered the planes to be shot down. When they were told what was going on, the aide asks Cheney what to do, and he says to engage the inbound plane. The order given by Cheney was never received by the fighter pilots, this story says, and so they were too late to interrupt the assault. So that's interesting. We know that he did order the plane to be shot down. We also have this story from The Independent. It says, we all know the inspiring story of Flight 93, of the heroic passengers who forced the hijacked plane to the ground, sacrificing themselves to save the lives of others. The only trouble is, it may simply not be true. Miller, who worked closely with the FBI during the 13 days that they were investigating the crash site, admits that in the end he cannot prove what happened. He can only infer it. Neither he nor anyone else knows exactly what caused Flight 93 to go down. But the American government and media have still pushed that story of the heroes of Flight 93 taking the plane down. Newsweek eventually did get a transcript of the voice recorder on the plane, and they continued to push this narrative. But although you can hear that there's some sort of fighting that takes place on the plane, and there are prayers lifted up, you can't hear that they got into the cockpit. That is not clear from the recording. But that story they continue to push. So moving on from Flight 93, one more thing on Flight 93 is if you look just at the debris field, it's way too expansive. Some of the pieces of the plane are way further away than they should be if the plane just crashed into the ground. It does seem like the plane was blown up, and that would account for how some of the pieces got so far away from the main part of the crash site. But let's talk about Building 7 now. Just watch the video of Building 7 collapsing. It collapsed perfectly in on itself, perfectly straight down. It's so obviously a controlled demolition. You can see it with your own eyes. Like, you don't need to be a physicist to know that, the official story is bullshit. So NIST, in their initial report, they had explained the event one way, but they got some pushback for that, and so they eventually had to reverse their position and acknowledge that Building 7 went into free fall for 2.25 seconds. So NIST, which did the report on the fall of the buildings, they have to admit that it was in free fall, because we can all see how quickly the building comes down. But like I said, you don't need to be a physicist to understand that buildings have resistance. To enter into free fall, there needs to be nothing, so you can just fall straight down with nothing to slow you. But buildings obviously provide resistance. Sorry about that. There's stuff in the way. It's pretty simple. So we also have interviews like this from this guy, Barry Jennings.
We're going to bring more of those to you now. Barry Jennings, you're on the 8th floor. You work for the City Housing Department. Explain to me the moment of impact.
Well, me and Mr. Hesh, the Corporation Counsel, were on the 23rd floor. I told him we got to get out of here. We started walking down the stairs. We made it to the 8th floor. Big explosion. Blew us back into the 8th floor. And I turned to Hesh. I said, this is it. We're dead. We're not going to make it out of here. I took a fire extinguisher and I bust the window out. That's when this gentleman here heard my cries for help. This gentleman right here, and he kept saying, stand by, somebody's coming to get you. They couldn't get to us for an hour because they couldn't find us.
So, as he reported there, there was an explosion in the building. This guy was in Building 7, and I mean, there's more from this guy if you want to look into him. Like, what he describes in that building could not be anything other than explosives. We also have this report from the BBC, and this is where things are going to start to get really weird, because, yeah, the BBC reported this collapse early.
Jane Stanley. Jane, what more can you tell us about the Salomon Brothers building and its collapse?
Well, only really what you already know. Details are very, very sketchy. As you can see
That's Building
behind
7.
me, the Trade Center appears to be still burning. We see these huge clouds of smoke and ash. And
so BBC reports the collapse of this building while the building is still standing there. And this there's an interesting follow-up to this, because this British fellow actually won a lawsuit against BBC for this. In Britain, they have some weird laws with their TV licensing. I don't know exactly how it works. But he refused to pay this mandatory £130 licensing fee. And he cited Section 15 of the Terrorism Act against the BBC because they had to have had foreknowledge of this terrorist attack to do that. They reported it 20 minutes before it actually fell. The judge actually accepts this guy's argument, and so he doesn't have to pay $130. Really crazy story, and yeah, this guy actually won this court case, because yeah, the evidence is right there for anyone to see. The BBC reported the collapse early. It's crazy, but there's a lot of stuff that points to what happened on 9/11 before it actually happened. It's something called predictive programming. It's one of the names for it. You have things like the Illuminati card game, where you can do things like blow up the Twin Towers or bomb the Pentagon. And this came out before September 11th, of course. And it's all about, global control, making a game out of it. And there are other examples of 9/11 being predicted in weird ways. The Columbine killers envisioned crashing a plane into New York City. They said that they would, potentially hijack a hell of a lot of bombs and crash a plane into New York City. Really interesting. But then we also have it in our media, in film and television. Check out this clip from the X-Files spin-off called The Lone Gunmen. This is their first episode.
Byers, your flight's gonna make an unscheduled stop in exactly 22 minutes.
Corner of Liberty and Washington. Lower Manhattan.
World Trade Center. I'm gonna crash the plane into the World Trade Center. Who's this? My name is...
So yeah, in this episode, the lone gunmen have to prevent the shadow government from remote control flying planes into the World Trade Center. This came out in 2001, the year of the attack, just earlier, before it happened, though. We also have this clip from a 1996 film called The Long Kiss Goodnight. Very interesting dialogue in this.
Budget cuts, dear. Congress blinded us overseas. I was forced to turn to any eyes and ears I could find, even if that meant recruiting the quote-unquote bad guys here.
budget cuts. Is that what this is about? Operation Honeymoon. Fuck me. You're running a fundraiser.
Fundraiser? 1993. World Trade Center bombing, remember? During the trial, one of the bombers claimed the CIA had advanced knowledge. The diplomat who issued the terrorist visa was CIA. It's not unthinkable they paved the way for the bombing, purely to justify a budget increase.
You're telling me that you're gonna fake some terrorist thing just to scare some money out of Congress?
Well, unfortunately, Mr. Hennessy, I've no idea how to fake killing 4,000 people. So we're just gonna have to do it for real. Oh, blame it on the Muslims, naturally. Then I get my funding. Good night, old girl. Dinner, the Albion.
It just like lays out the whole thing. The whole thing. I mean, there's more to it than money, of course. There's power and control in numerous ways, but it really does lay out a lot of the stuff that's going on in that clip. And we also have just government officials seeming to know about the attacks before they should have.
And we were in a building in which we were trapped for about 10, 15 minutes.
Are you talking about did you go immediately to the Office of Emergency Management?
No, I went down to the scene and we set up headquarters at 75 Barclay Street, which was right there with the police commissioner, the fire commissioner, the head of emergency management. And we were operating out of there when we were told that the World Trade Center was going to collapse. And it did collapse before we could actually get out of the building. So
You hear what he just said? Rudy Giuliani said that they were told the building was going to collapse. Nobody knew the building was going to collapse unless they were in on it. Because historically, a building has never collapsed like that. Never before in history has a high-rise fallen in that way until September 11th, where 3 of them evidently did. Now you've got... this is another kind of example that seems to be evidence of people having foreknowledge. There were these 5 men reported for acting suspiciously, and they were arrested. And yeah, we have some of the FBI documents that talk about this. So the guy that sees these guys, he first noticed this Urban Movers truck, and then he mentioned that later he was in the vicinity of the Port Authority George Washington Bridge when he noticed someone wearing a Bergen County fireman's uniform. He stated that he was unaware that Bergen County even had a fire department. And we're not going to go through all this, but this guy has a good summary here. Urban Front Movers, it seems to be, was a front operation. Like these guys seem to have Israeli intelligence ties to Mossad. Mossad is like the Israeli CIA. And so these guys were celebrating the September 11th attacks, and they were set up to film it and take pictures before, so like they were able to watch the first plane hit, and there was film and witness testimony that shows that they were high-fiving after the first plane hit. So they were sitting there watching this and celebrating it. Really weird story. And then we have so many, other random pieces of evidence that point to this whole official story being a lie, such as this clip here.
Another development on Saturday, New York officials revealed at a news conference here in the city that a hijacker's passport was found blocks from the World Trade Center crash site, if you can believe that. No other details were given, but the discovery prompted the FBI and police to expand the search area down in Lower Manhattan.
So we're supposed to believe that the 9/11 hijackers, he's on this plane that slams into the building, explodes into this fireball, that his passport somehow flew out into the rubble, totally intact. You have to be retarded to believe this stuff. There's no way to believe this if you just look into this stuff. There's no way you can believe this official story. Then you've got memes like jet fuel can't melt steel beams. And you've got this guy who made a video trying to show that, well, you don't have to. The steel can weaken and then it bends like nothing. That's not the point of the phrase jet fuel can't melt steel beams. The point is that there was molten steel at the site in New York. molten steel, liquid. Even if the jet fuel could have weakened the steel by heating it up, it could not have turned it into lava. That is the point. So here's some firefighters talking about just this.
Molten steel running down the channel rails. Like you're in a foundry.
Yeah. Like lava.
Like lava.
From a volcano.
Lava. Describe it as lava. And it's not just the molten steel. It's also, these guys literally heard bombs going off. The firefighters that were there are witnesses to what actually happened.
What happened? We was in an explosion. We was in the lobby and the third explosion, the whole lobby collapsed on us. What was it like? Horrible.
It's like hell. You don't want to know.
The whole building just collapsed on us inside the lobby.
Was that a secondary explosion?
Yes, it was.
That was the planet, probably?
Yeah, definitely secondary explosion. But we was inside waiting to go upstairs. And on the way upstairs, the whole fucking thing blew.
A secondary explosion. He's saying it was more than just the Twin Towers being hit by these planes. He's describing secondary explosions. I hate these trains, man. So, we have another clip from these firefighters.
Done yet?
How does this...
What the fuck did we do?
We made it outside. We made it about a block.
We made it at least 2 blocks, and we started running. Floor by floor, instead of popping out.
It was if they had detonated.
Yeah,
If they
detonated,
were planned to
yeah.
take down a building. Boom, 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 boom.
All the way down. I was watching it and running. Just ran up, and then you just sort of this cloud of shit chasing you down.
So he describes it right there. He says it's like planned explosives, boom, 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 and you can even look at, like, there are images of the Twin Towers where you can see as the building's collapsing, the windows like blowing out from floors underneath the collapse. So like they are going out like one at a time. And there are images that show what these guys are describing here. And they heard the boom, 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 you know. Those towers were taken down by explosives inside the buildings. They were not taken down by just the planes hitting them. There's no way that the official story describes what actually happened. So to end our video here, I'd like to look at the history of September 11th, the date in particular. So we have numerous things throughout history that occur on this day, such as this this hijacking. This guy, Frank Cordner, stole a Cessna on September 11th, and he ended up crashing it into the lawn of the White House on September 12th. And it was late at night, you know, when he did this. So yeah, that's kind of interesting. Just the day that happened. But more interesting, we have events like this where William Morgan was kidnapped on September 11th. And William Morgan was a man he was a Freemason, and he decided to expose some of the secrets of the Masonic order. So he wrote a book to do this, and the Freemasons didn't like this, and so they decided to kidnap and murder him, and that's what happened. And they tried to do the same to his publisher, but they were unsuccessful in that attempt. But Morgan was murdered, and this caused an outrage amongst the American people. And the first third party in America was formed because of this, called the Anti-Masonic Party, which included members such as John Quincy Adams, who were standing up against Masonry and its incredible evil. So the Masons used this day, though, September 11th, for his kidnapping. We also have September 11th was used for this speech by George H.W. Bush to talk about the New World Order. He said, "Out of these troubled times, our fifth objective, a new world order can emerge. A new era, freer from the threat of terror, stronger in the pursuit of justice, and more secure in the quest for peace." And the way he's talking, out of these troubled times, We can create an era of peace. It very much sounds like the Masonic principle of order out of chaos. And the Bush family has long ties to the occult, to secret societies. In fact, the Bushes got their money from, war profiteering off the Nazis, essentially. But check out this clip here, though.
You were both in Skull and Bones, the secret society.
It's so secret we can't talk about it.
What does that mean for America? The conspiracy theorists are going to go
I'm
on.
sure they are. I don't know. I haven't seen the web.
Number 322?
First of all, he's not the nominee. And, look, I look forward...
Are you prepared to lose?
No, I'm not going to lose.
You both were members of Skull and Bones, a secret society at Yale. What does that tell us?
Not much, because it's a secret.
Is there a secret handshake? Is there a secret code?
I wish there were something secret I could manifest.
322, a secret number?
There are all kinds of secrets, Tim, but one thing is not a secret. I disagree with this president's direction.
Such a pathetic attempt to change the conversation. But yeah, that year, we either were going to get George Bush or John Kerry. And both of these guys were members of Skull and Bones, the same Masonic secret society at Yale that is used as a recruitment ground to put cult members, these secret society members, in high positions of political power and in power and also in intelligence agencies. And there is another occult link to all of this, because in Masonic lore and ritual, one of the most important myths is that of Isis and Osiris. And the Wepet Renpet festival, which is the New Year's Day celebration for the Egyptians, was a celebration of the death and rebirth of Osiris, which by extension brought about the rejuvenation and rebirth of the land and its people. Now, this day is the Egyptian New Year, and on our current calendars, that day is September 11th. So you have September 11th has key importance to groups like Freemasonry as kind of an occult holiday. So if you really want to understand what's going on with September 11th, like, why did these attacks take place? What were they really after? If there were rogue elements in our government that did this, why? Please subscribe to this channel, because that's what I'm dedicated to talking about here. Secret societies, cults, government corruption. How do these secret societies impact American history, the history of the world? They play a big part in all of our history, in the foundation of America, in the revolutions that have taken place. These secret societies have played a key role, and they continue to play a key role in politics and in our ongoing history. So, if you want to understand more about what's going on with all this behind the scenes, please subscribe for more content. If you want to check out more on 9/11 specifically, I'm going to include the link to what I would say is the best documentary on 9/11, and I'll put that in the link down below. So, guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you all have a great day, but I also hope that you never forget September 11th. Don't forget what these people did. They murdered civilians to press their agenda, to shape the world in the way that they want it. And we have to fight against them. We have to expose them and stand against what these people are doing. We can fight them. They're not going to win in the end. God is not on their side. So, thank you guys. Have a great day. I'll see you next time.